Not be deterred, we will not be stopped, and we will stay the course. And we're going to stay the course and stand with all immigrants, no matter when they got here and where they came from. I think some people need to just sit down and read the damn Constitution. Because frankly, if you read it, there is just no question. The founders were crystal clear after debates about who can vote and who can be a citizen, who can actually, it's this whole, I want to decide whether or not you're an American and whether or not you can vote, and what, they wanted to get rid of all that. And they simply said, all persons, didn't even use a gender, born, that means you were born in the United States or naturalized in the United States, are citizens of the United States.
We are going to stand up for families in this country, no matter where they are, whether they're in San Antonio, they're in Florida, Nebraska, California, Chicago, wherever they are.
This is not the America we aspire to be. What we need is comprehensive immigration reform. Reform that creates a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants so that they can fully contribute to our American dream.
I know a lot of Black Americans don't want to see it now, but a small vast of us, like myself, we see that Trump is looking out for everyone, including us. Majority may not see it until later, and hopefully it won't be too late, but that man is looking out for everybody. The fact that the birthright citizenship ban passed says a lot. And he said himself that the birthright citizenship was made for the babes of slaves, meaning it was made for us African American individuals. It was made for us Black people. It was made for us. And unfortunately, for years, the system somehow formulated and manipulated us into thinking that we don't need all the benefits here in America, and gave the benefits that belong to us to everybody else, aka the illegal immigrants here. And Big Dog said, nope, not no more, and it passed. It passed. This is big. This is epic. This is big. I would not be surprised if Trump gives some sort of money to the culture. Who knows? I'm just speaking, theoretically. I don't know. Listen. But this is a big deal. And he really looking out for everybody. I know folks don't want to see that, and that's fine, but I see it. And I'm here for it. For real. Amen.
That's not what I said. Because it's not true. Okay. And if you've been here for any moment, you know one of the things I absolutely cannot stand is when someone comes and tries to all lives matter my words. Because my words are not for all lives. My words are for Black lives. Okay. White women are not a target. White women are beneficiaries. What is happening to white women right now is something completely different than what is happening to Black women, to women of color. White women are being sent a bill for the benefits that they have reaped. White supremacy wants their womb. They ain't going anywhere. And quite honestly, even if they were a target, white women are not uncomfortable enough to actually give a real fight to liberation. They are not uncomfortable enough, and no matter how crass it may sound, I am not intending to offend anyone at all, but the truth is, white women are going to have to die. A lot of them, in order for them to gain some strength and fight their husbands. That ain't got shit to do with me, and I don't have time to wait on them. I'm not talking about white women. Latinos. Well, which color? We talking about Black Latinos or white Latinos? Because again, Let's have us a real conversation here. White Latinos, one, we already said immigration, okay? Deportations, we've already hit that. Well, that affects Black, undocumented, and immigrant people as well. But you white Latinos out here, you love your...
Hello tribe, welcome again to this particular show. I go by Sherlock. That is, if it's your first time that you're bumping across this one here, and today's one, we are outdoors. We're having a very cool chilly weather out here. It's raining. That's a good thing per se, but the court injunctions, that is for the new next move as per to the birthright citizenship, is to something to go by. We very much aware that lately there the trending patterns in the US. We had Donald Trump signing that particular executive order that will revoke a birthright citizenship of the undocumented immigrants. So especially the children will be the victims of this old ordeal. I'm going to read something shortly here. In as much as that, yes, we have all those ups and downs, the time was going on, there is the light at the end of the tunnel. Court injunctions first, line of defense. Now, the New Hampshire Federal Court, ruling as U.S. District Judge, in New Hampshire, Judge Joseph Lante issued a nationwide injunction. And what does this exactly mean? What it means is that Trump's executive orders could cause, irreparable, harm to U.S.-born children by potentially denying them citizenship. And two, the injunction will temporarily, that is, halt that enforcement of the order and protects children's rights under the Constitution. And of course, that one does not end there. What it also implies is that constitutional argument. Yeah, there's been this particular phrase out there, the 14th Amendment, the 14th Amendment. We have to understand what that is. The legal basis of the 14th Amendment guarantees that all persons, irrespective of gender, race, ethnicity, religion, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. There is a legal basis on which maybe somebody would argue from that particular standpoint. And also the lawyers from civil rights groups like the ACLU, the NAACP, and the Asian Law Caucus, they argue that Trump's order directly violates this, amendment. Now, guys, I'm going to leave it to you to the videos that I've sampled, put them together, that are echoing the same sentiments that you're trying to share here. And of course, as usual, as you do it here, guys, I'll circle back at the end of this particular show with my thoughts, comments over the same. So let's meet at the end of it.
Proximity to whiteness. There's benefit in it for you as well. And you white Latinos, if you walk the line and you stay real quiet, you will sell my black ass out for the trinkets, the scraps that fall from white supremacy's table. You will feed on that shit like goddamn rats, when you should be sitting upright, eating like self-determined men. You will sell my ass out. So I'm not talking about that either. I'm talking about black people in America, and what birthright citizenship gave to us. A people stolen from their land, forced here by colonizers, enslaved, tortured, bred like fucking cattle. The 14th Amendment gave those children a country of our own. I am the descendant of those children, And all of this shit that you're talking right here, none of that is like us.
Did this man just say that the 14th Amendment birthright citizenship was only meant for the babies of slaves? Let's talk about the history behind the 14th Amendment and why any discussion and debate around it should honestly be concerning for us all. The 14th Amendment was passed by Congress in 1866, and then it was ratified 2 years later in 1868. And no, it wasn't written to protect the babies of the formerly enslaved. It was written to correct deep injustice. After the Civil War, Congress needed to overturn the infamous Dred Scott decision that said that any black person, free or enslaved, could not be citizens of the United States. So the 14th Amendment made it plain. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdictions thereof are citizens. This wasn't an amendment just made for black people, but to help all groups by defining citizenship and protecting freedom, a right that used to be denied to a lot of groups. Because let's just say that defining citizenship before the 14th Amendment in the United States was discombobulated and discriminatory. Citizenship was usually defined by each state and by the concept of birthright citizenship that we inherited from British common law, but it wasn't applied equally. Then came the Naturalization Act of 1790, which granted citizenship to free white people. So Native Americans excluded. Black people, free or enslaved, yeah, definitely excluded. And if the outcome of the 1790 Naturalization Act didn't make citizenship clear, the Dred Scott case would for black people. Honestly, it made it worse, declaring us not citizens and saying that we were not entitled to citizenship, period. Hence the 14th Amendment after the Civil War. And after the ratification of the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship would still be questioned in 1898. This time in a Supreme Court case called United States versus Wong Kim Ark. This is where the Supreme Court ruled that regardless of any parent's citizenship, if a child is born in the United States, they are a citizen of the United States. That precedent has stood for over 125 years and now is being challenged. Today's Supreme Court ruling did not touch on the issue and constitutionality of birthright citizenship as detailed in the 14th Amendment. Instead, it limited how far federal judges could block it, meaning the executive order could still take place in states where it has not been stopped by a federal judge. I made this video today because we need to understand that the 14th Amendment was a course correction in American history, a response to centuries of exclusion when it came to people that were born in this country. But now that we're seeing efforts from this administration to challenge and unravel that history, I have to ask you guys this question. If after the Civil War we fought to define U.S. citizenship once, why are we trying to do it all over again? This is why knowing the real freedom story and the true complex history of the United States is important. Because when we don't, or it's misconstrued, cherry-picked, twisted, we're bound to repeat the mistakes of the past, and we also don't understand how fragile freedom has always been for certain groups in this country.
So Satan's favorite child has been hard at work, orchestrating chaos around everywhere. And birthright citizenship is no exception. And I made a previous video, saying that Trump might undo birthright citizenship and turn black people back into slaves. And I got a comment from Cookie that said they are removing birthright citizenship from African Americans. In fact, President Trump stated on television that birthright citizenship was for African Americans, which he was right. Trump is kind of like a genie. You know how a genie gives you 3 wishes and you think they're all great, but they usually have side effects. For instance, if you're a man and you wish for a genie to make all the women of the world love you, and you're thinking, great, I get to have everybody, except all the women in the world would include your mother, your daughter, your sisters. So you see, you're getting this great thing with these side effects that you didn't see coming. Trump is like that with a lot of his policies. I mean, look at the tariffs. They sounded great. But then once you understand how tariffs work, not so great. The same thing when he was saying with immigration. He was like, he's going to deport all the, cartels and all that stuff and all the criminals. But of course, now he's taking people born in America. And some of these people aren't the Hispanic, they're not from the Hispanic community, which are his targets. Some of these people are white, Danish, and German Europeans. Which brings me to birthright citizenship. Yes, he's saying he's not going to undo it for black people, particularly African Americans who, descendants of enslaved people through the transatlantic slave trade, which sounds great. But then when you remember that his policies always have a much, much worse downside. So my thinking is, even if he won't or he can't overturn the 14th Amendment, which is the birthright citizenship, he might try to redefine what it means to be a U.S. citizen. For the 14th Amendment, we had the Dred Scott decision, which said that a black man has no rights which a white man was bound to respect. So black people, by the basis of race, who were enslaved by the basis of race, weren't citizens on the basis of race. So now I don't think he'll use race. With the Hispanic community, he's using their immigration status or lack of. It seems he might just redefine what it means to be a U.S. citizenship without the race being questioned, or at least explicitly saying so. He would just use other markers that predominantly are black people or affect black people. For instance, he might say, if your parent was incarcerated, then you can't be a citizen. Obviously, mass incarceration affects black people, black men, disproportionately. So if your dad was in prison, then you're no longer a citizen. Or maybe some other thing like, education, which he has been coming for black people's education. Those things, you can't say they are race-based because he's not saying explicitly so, but he's saying things that affect black people. And redefining citizenship seems like far-fetched, but then once you start to look at, tyrannical empires and dictators, if you watch particularly How to Be a Tyrant on Netflix, dictators recreate a new society. They create a new normal. So what was before is no longer that. If you look at black people, for instance, African Americans, at one point in time, they weren't African American or black. They were indigenous communities of Africa, particularly West Africa. And then when they were stolen from Africa and brought to the United States, they were stripped of their culture and everything about them. And the only thing that was left was the skin, which white people called black. And then they had other names, slaves, the N-word, all these other, names that evolved over time. And now we have black and African Americans. So because they were able to do that then, again, they can redefine that now. It's the same thing Germany did in the 30s when they racialized Jewish people. First, being Jewish was more, ethnicity, culture, or religion, but in the 30s, it became racial. And we also see this with, gender, with women. Instead of, sometimes they don't want to, say we're going to take away women's rights. They'll say liberals or women who don't, they don't work at the home, they're following their careers, and you think they're just coming for those specific women that don't want to be married, don't want to have kids, but they actually mean all women. So I feel like Trump and the Republicans, they'll have little tricks, as they have done with, the Voting Rights Act. They haven't overturned it all the way, but they've chipped, at it, different sections, and also put a lot of other barriers that they're not explicitly saying black people can't vote, but they're using methods which disproportionately affect black people. They did the same thing with Roe v. Wade, chipped little by little. Eventually, they overturned it all. So it's looking like that's what he's going to do with birthright citizenship. And I don't necessarily think he might do it, now. I think because Trump is 79. So his policies will more be carried out by Republicans in the future, little by little. So even if, hypothetically speaking, even if birthright citizenship is no longer a thing for black people, it might not be the black people here now, their future children, because these things, they take time. And Republicans have realized if you can't do it all at once right away, you slowly just chip, redefine what it means. It's like a slow gaslighting thing. You're changing the reality of people until they can no longer remember what it used to be. To the second part of Cookie's comment, he said that Trump said he was not gonna, touch African American citizenship, and he said it on television. And it sounds like a good thing, but he shouldn't even have to say that if he hadn't made it a problem in the first place. You know, the birthright citizenship was settled in 1868 and added on again in 1898. It was already settled. It's been the rule of law for, all over 100 years. So the fact that he first of all even made it an issue, it's a problem he created, and he's trying to make himself look like a hero by fixing something that wasn't even broken. It's like how he, back in 2020, he started to ban TikTok, and now in 2025, he's like, I saved TikTok, which is a problem he created, which is another thing, again, dictators love to do. They create problems that aren't there, and then they make themselves the hero for solving it, which is, he's doing this with birthright citizenship, which was already settled. Thank you so much, Cookie, for watching my video and commenting. Everybody, please go and follow this content creator. Let's hope that Trump stops, well, he's pretty much stops doing every single thing that he's doing. In fact, if he doesn't do anything for the next 3.5 years and just goes to Mar-a-Lago and chills out, it'll be a lot better than causing all of these chaos, like the little demon that he is.
Policies where...
So your father is not a citizen of the United States?
He's not.
Okay. And your mother, when did your mom take the citizenship test? Was it before or after you were born?
After I was born.
After you were born. Okay.
After years of being in this, following the legal process of becoming a naturalized citizen, she followed it through the legal process. And
so
I think
you gained citizenship through birthright then?
Well, but you gain citizenship through birthright citizenship in that sense too, right? I mean, every American. So what I want to do is revive a vision of citizenship where every kid who enjoys...
I'm sorry, just to backtrack. So your father is not a citizen,
They came to this country legally.
Birthright citizenship happened because of this Chinese American guy. In 1873, Wong Kim-ark was born in San Francisco. His Cantonese parents were immigrants and not U.S. citizens because Chinese weren't allowed to naturalize at the time. In 1895, he was coming back from a trip to China when customs detained him at the port of San Francisco. They argued he couldn't legally enter the country, despite him having been born on American soil. His parents were Chinese citizens. Now, the 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, said that all persons born in the United States are citizens of the United States. But that amendment had never been tested in court by an American-born child of foreign citizens. After 3 years of legal battles, in 1898, the Supreme Court affirmed Kim-ark's U.S. citizenship. The American citizenship, which Wong Kim-ark acquired by birth within the United States, has not been lost or taken away by anything happening since his birth. United States versus Wong Kim-ark legally formalized citizenship as everyone's birthright. Because of this Toy Sanese guy, if you're born on U.S. soil, you belong here, no matter where your parents came from. This precedent for birthright citizenship has stood unchallenged to this day. Well, until yesterday. We'll see what happens in the courts this time around.
So the ruling that SCOTUS issued yesterday does not get rid of U.S. birthright citizenship. I'm going to explain to you why at least one of the justices who dissented called it the beginning of our collective demise. So just to give you a little bit of background, one of the first things that Donald Trump did when he came into the Oval Office earlier this year was to sign an executive order that basically changes the way citizenship works here in the United States. Under the 14th Amendment, the very plain language of the 14th Amendment, anyone who is born in the United States, subject to a very, very, very tiny exception that doesn't apply to pretty much anyone, you are a citizen of the United States. Donald Trump, with his executive order, wants to add a provision to the 14th Amendment that doesn't exist, has never existed, is not recognized under the law, and hasn't been ratified by the process provided for under the Constitution. This is a blatant violation of the Constitution. He basically wants to make it so that anyone who was born to an undocumented woman here in the United States cannot become a citizen of the United States. Like I said, that is not the way the law currently works. So, of course, what happens is that certain plaintiffs file a lawsuit, and the judges in those lawsuits, there were 3 lawsuits at issue here. The judges in those lawsuits didn't just grant relief to those particular plaintiffs, they also entered a nationwide injunction that prevents the application of this unconstitutional executive order against anybody in the United States. So here's where we're going to talk a little bit about procedure in the law. Generally speaking, when a court enters an order, that order is limited to the parties that are actually before that judge in that specific litigation, i.e. the plaintiff and the defendant. But in this situation, the judges determined that because the executive order was unconstitutional on its face and would have such far-reaching consequences to public policy, that it was necessary to enter an injunction that would impact not just the parties at issue in the litigation, but every single person in the entire country. What is an injunction? An injunction is essentially a command by a court that says either you must do this thing or you cannot do this thing. It's a command. And in these 3 situations, the judges issued a command to not just the parties at issue in this case, but to anyone else who might try to implement this unconstitutional executive order. So what happened yesterday with the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court basically said, we're not going to weigh in on whether or not the executive order is unconstitutional. We're just going to zip it with regard to that. But we are going to tell you, these 3 judges, you exceeded your judicial capacity and authority by trying to issue a decree that is applicable to not just the parties at issue in this litigation, but to every single person in the country. Sounds like a highly technical and maybe not even very controversial decision. And a lot of people are saying, what's the big deal? It's not as if birthright citizenship has disappeared. In fact, the order specifically says that that executive order won't slide into effect for another 30 days. Of course, within those 30 days, all sorts of people can do all sorts of things to prevent it actually going into effect. Here is why at least one of the justices who dissented on this decision called this the beginning of our collective demise. You all learned in history class when you were in junior high that there are 3 branches of government, right? There is the judiciary, there is the executive, and there is the legislative. So the judiciary, those are the courts. The executive, that's the president, and the legislative, that's Congress. And the whole point of having 3 branches of government is to ensure that if one exceeds its authority, the other 2 are there to check that authority and make sure that there are no kings in the United States. Well, in this situation, these 3 judges saw that the executive was clearly exceeding its authority by trying to implement a law that is on its face blatantly unconstitutional. And this law isn't just going to affect the people who are in the litigation before them. This law is going to affect our daily lives. Every single person who now lives in the United States is going to be affected by a law that completely and fundamentally and profoundly determines how to identify as a citizen of this country. So many of people's rights are tied to whether or not they are a citizen of this country. It's not just the ability to physically be here. There are so many other things like employment benefits, marital benefits, tax benefits. These are things that affect so many people's daily lives. And as a result of that, these judges understandably and reasonably felt we need a nationwide order to just put a hold on this situation until the highest court in the land, i.e. the Supreme Court, weighs in on the merits and tells us all once and for all that this executive order is unconstitutional and improper. But now, with the Supreme Court ruling, basically they've given Donald Trump a blank check, not just to implement this birthright citizenship nonsense, but to enter any executive order that is blatantly illegal. We have a Congress that literally won't do anything to check the executive. So the judges, they were the only ones left who were willing to uphold the Constitution in light of everything that's going on. But the Supreme Court just cut them off at the knees and basically said, no, judges, you cannot protect the people from unconstitutional orders. Instead, if a person feels that they are being negatively impacted by this unconstitutional executive order, the burden is on that person to hire a lawyer, to pay for that lawyer, to go through all of the things necessary to bring a lawsuit in our already congested docket and then work their way all the way up through appeal after appeal after appeal, and then maybe they can obtain relief. So do you see what's happening? Do you see how there has now been a fundamental shift in burden on who is in charge of ensuring the constitutionality of our country? It's not our government, it's we the people. And unfortunately, because of who this executive order is going to disproportionately affect, it's the people who are least equipped to financially, emotionally, mentally fund the continued constitutionality of our country. That is why Justice Jackson described this decision as the beginning of our collective demise.
Let me tell you what comes next in this birthright citizenship case. A federal judge ruled that a class action lawsuit challenging the executive order to end birthright citizenship can move forward, which means we're one step closer to the court saying, hey, you just can't erase the 14th Amendment because you don't like dark babies. Of course, the White House is throwing a tantrum over this and insisting the Supreme Court already ended this, but it didn't. Nice try. Here's the thing. This case was struck down by the Supreme Court based on a technicality. States that didn't participate in the suit to lift the ban could still implement it. But then SCOTUS gave them a subtle hint. Maybe try again as a class action lawsuit, which they did, and the judge approved. Now there's a chance that the ban could be lifted in all states because the class action affects all of the people, not just the states. The Constitution literally spells it out very clearly. Born here, you're a citizen, that's it. That's the tweet. When this case goes to the Supreme Court again, some experts think that SCOTUS might go 9-0 on this, or maybe even 9-2 with Alito and Thomas pouting in the corner somewhere.
So I just saw the notification that Trump signed an executive order to end birthright citizenship. Even though I'm born in the United States, my situation is a little tricky because Korea recognizes dual citizenship, so I technically have both. I can't believe this is who people voted for. Lord have mercy.
You gained citizenship through birthright then.
Well, but you gain citizenship through birthright citizenship in that sense too, right?
Great value, Jimmy Neutron. Where are you? Has anybody heard from Vivek? Where is Vivek? What happened? He was a part of Doge. And then he realized he was too brown for Doge. So that they told him to get out. Where is great value Jimmy Neutron? I would love to hear him weigh in on this whole birthright citizenship thing because I forgot about this interview. This interview was from almost about a year ago, and the person who's interviewing him is bringing up the fact that his mother and father are not citizens, that they had to take citizenship tests, and that he essentially gained his citizenship through birthright. And then he goes on to defend him getting birthright citizenship as every person in this country has birthright citizenship because he defines birthright citizenship as legal citizens giving birth to a baby on American soil. So if he's right, then that means all of y'all in danger.
Yes, Tribe. I told you that at the end of this particular show, I'll circle back with my thoughts and comments over the same. Now, when did it become now that we need to see or we need to know who are legally here? Because per se, it is we are all illegally here. We are all illegally on this planet Earth, irrespective of where you found yourself. Okay, now what I mean by illegally is that nobody owns this particular, piece of rock that is suspended in space, and when somebody tries to call a part of this particular big piece of rock suspended in space that they're the legal, inhabitants, I don't know how I should really call that one. Because it looks, I'm compelled, for the lack of, better expression here, because arrogance, ignorance, arrogance will, do good here. You see, what we are supposed to, that's my opinion. I purely, those are my purely opinions, but I also do stand corrected. That I think something better needs to be done. Humanity needs really to step up. Humanity needs to step up. Yeah, I admit it. Like, how this piece of rock has been there even before you were thought to be there. We were thought to be there. If it has been existing, who has been the custodians? And that really brings me to a question of how humanity has degenerated instead of, we call it civilization, the age of new civilization. But our civilization, man, this is civilization. No, this is something else. This is something else. I don't know what it is, but I feel like you also get me. This is. Drop me your comments. I know it's burning. Drop me that particular comment in the comment section. Let me know exactly what you think. And guys, you've been there for me, and I salute you. My returning subscribers, I want to say thank you because you've been there. And the new ones, those ones who are tuning in for the first time, if you're bumping across this accidentally, how about a thumbs up? Tiny little comment. We've talked about that on the comment section. They'll put a very big smile on my face. Now, see you in the next one.